what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
U.S. Health Advisors want you to know your health coverage does not have to be complicated. If you aren't happy with your insurance plan, there are unlimited and comprehensive medical plan options available to you right now. U.S. Health Advisors offers solutions which can't be found anywhere else. They can even offer you the ability to purchase more coverage if and when you need it. U.S. Health Advisors offers fair rates and no surprises. Sounds nice, doesn't it? If you'd like to know more, contact U.S. Health Advisors at 828-554-3032 or by email at daniel.bryant@ushadvisors.com. Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Footcandle Films here on the Mesh.tv. My name is Alan Jackson. I am a co-director, co-founder of the Footcandle Film Society and the Footcandle Film Festival. With me across the table is the other co in that equation, Chris Fry. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good.
Good.
We have some interesting films to talk about today.
We do. So we just kind of have come down off of our annual film festival high. I don't know about you. I just woke up from the festival, and it was a week and a half ago, but I have enjoyed a little bit of sleep in the meantime.
A little bit.
We had a great festival. We are going to talk about it a little bit later in the episode and do a little recap on kind of what happened during our annual film festival. But before we do that, we are going to start off the show with a couple of reviews of films that are in theaters as of the time of this recording. Will probably still be as you listen to this. We'll be reviewing the latest film from director James Gray starring Brad Pitt, Ad Astra, and then following it up with a little film that I don't think anybody's really heard of or seen, hasn't gotten any buzz or discussion online that I'm aware of, Chris.
Which is shocking because it's like a comic book type.
It is, but it's a film called Joker, and it's directed by Mr. Phillips, and it's starring Mr. Joaquin Phoenix. I joke that is a very touchstone film right now, sparking a lot of discussion, some degree of controversy, and a lot of differing opinions. And Chris and I are just going to add fuel to the fire and just add our opinions into the mix as well.
I'm sure our take is the one that you've been waiting for.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody else has gotten theirs out of the way. They're kind of clearing the ground for us. And now we get to jump in and set the record straight on how you should see this film. So we do have those two reviews to discuss, Ad Astra and the film Joker. Then we'll be moving on into our news section where we're going to be, as I said, talking about the film festival we just had and talking through the winners and the different categories that we had and some of our experiences from that weekend. Then we will finish up the show with our recommendation of the episode. That's where Chris and I both give one film as a recommendation we think is worth checking out, something you could preferably find online. Whether it's a new film or just something we want to bring back to the forefront, something either way we think is worth you checking out. So that is going to be our show. Chris, I'm ready to go if you are.
Let's lift off.
Oh, very nice. Did you plan that?
I did not.
Oh, that was really good. All right, let's go right into our first review, which is the latest Brad Pitt science fiction directed by James Gray. It is Ad Astra.
I do what I do because of my dad. He gave his life for the pursuit of knowledge. Because up there is where our story's going to be told.
Ad Astra is James Gray's latest film. It talks about an astronaut, Roy McBride, who is played by Brad Pitt, and he's undertaking a mission to find out what's going on in the solar system because there's some energy that's being released, and it may have something to do with his missing father who went on a doomed expedition something like 30 years prior. So with this film, we enter into the realm of science fiction, which I'm generally a fan of. With some differing results. The Martian, I was really high on that. Interstellar, not as high on, but still thought it had some interesting concepts. And then we have something that's not science fiction, but deals obviously with space. First Man, that came out with Damien Chazelle directing and Ryan Gosling playing Neil Armstrong. But you have, so space genre. I like it in general. I dig it. So, Alan, what are your feelings as far as Ad Astra, and what does it veer towards more true science fiction like Interstellar, or is it more along the lines of something with space exploration and the importance of space discovery with like First Man, even though that was a biopic? Where do you feel like this film falls as far as what it's trying to explore and or accomplish?
The thing with this film is I feel like it's trying to do its own thing, which for better or for worse, it works for me, but it does feel like it's kind of going on its own path. We have the elements of a science fiction film in that the writer, director in this case, James Gray, and others involved in the film are helping visualize what a world could look like in the future based on further space exploration. For example, in the movie, we have a colonized moon. Mm-hmm. We have space travel possible between planets. Obviously, so that's the very science fiction-y part of the movie.
Colony on Mars as well, right?
Oh, yeah, on Mars too, exactly. So you got the colonies everywhere.
Right.
So that's already kind of that science fiction. I'm going to envision a world that I think is possible. But it's all grounded very much in reality, and that everything I saw in this film, I'm like, yeah, I could totally see that in the next 100 years being possible. An Applebee's on the moon. Yeah, sure. Why not? If people are living up there, there's going to be an Applebee's up there at some point. So there's elements about that I think really work. So that's the science fiction-y part. But then this film also is interested in exploring human nature to some degree through our protagonist with Brad Pitt, playing an astronaut that has this ability about himself where he can he just stays calm all the time, even in a very intense situation like we see early in the film. He's still able to regulate his heart rate, and he still doesn't really it never picks up pace. He just keeps himself calm. He just has that ability to do so.
Right.
But you start to learn over the film that there is something going on in his head that he's wrestling with that kind of questions a little bit about how much of a solid, true rock stone hero he is. And it has to do a little bit with the relationship of the father, as you mentioned in the description. So we have a film that's, I think, equal parts. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what that could look like. But the film's ultimately more interested in just exploring the relationship dynamic of the father and son and what it means to be a father, what it means to be a provider, a caregiver, a partner in a relationship, all these things that I think the main character finds himself questioning. Me personally, I feel like it balances them really well. I loved all of the science fiction-y elements of the film, and I loved how just matter-of-factly they were played. It didn't spend a lot of time trying to explain how these things happened or why these things are going on. Why are there space pirates on the moon? That's not the important part of the film. It's that here, this is where we are now. This is what the world looks like in the future. And just kind of drop you in, and you'll figure it out as we go. So James Gray doesn't seem too terribly interested in explaining his elements of the science fiction genre. He's definitely more interested in talking through the father-son dynamic, which is something I know has been kind of an ongoing theme in a lot of his other films. So the father-son dynamics, the idea of what it means to be kind of a man in today's world, I think is something he seems pretty keen on exploring. The film worked for me. I liked it quite a bit. There are some elements of the film I think were a little tougher to handle and swallow. A couple of things I had to kind of look past a little bit. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I enjoyed the film. It was different than what I expected, but I think in a good way. What about you, Chris?
Director James Gray, what he did accomplish with this film was making science fiction boring for me, which is somewhat of a challenge. With films that maybe I wasn't as high on something as Interstellar, I wasn't bored. Maybe I didn't like it. I wasn't really high on it, but I was never bored. With this film, I was just bored. There wasn't really anything that was there for me. The science fiction was not science fiction-y enough. It was more like something out of First Man. I mean, other than the fact that they were on Mars, which we're not yet. Yes, there's a colony on the moon. We don't have that, but we have been to the moon. There just wasn't enough science fiction-y elements to make it interesting. So on that front, not interesting. And you referenced James Gray's kind of interest in father-son drama. Yeah, not interested in that because I've already seen other films of his where he does that. I don't feel like any new ground was covered here. So it was just redundant and boring for me. He really did the father-son drama in a previous film, Lost City of Z. And if you were to sum up that movie, it would be like Daddy Issues in the Jungle. For Ad Astra, you could just say Daddy Issues in Space. And that's basically it. And for me, there wasn't that much more to it. And he managed to make space and science fiction boring for me.
Well, okay. I see your boring comment, but you say it wasn't science fiction-y enough, but I think that's probably part of what I appreciated about the film is that they didn't feel the need to make it more science fiction-y than it needed to be. It was very matter-of-factly. It was we've colonized the moon, and it looks pretty much like a shopping mall on the moon. Nothing too much more extravagant than that. Oh, we have to drive to another location. Okay, here's the little moon buggies, which you've seen. We all know what these moon buggies look like, and we're going to drive across the surface of the moon, which, yes, we know what that looks like. There's nothing really shocking there. I like the fact that I felt it was a very grounded, realistic view of the future, added with a drama that could be taking place at any time period. It doesn't have to be in space. It doesn't have to be on Earth. It just happens to be in this situation in the future up in space. So, I get where you're going. It is a slow-paced film. It's not really in a rush to do anything.
No.
But the pace worked for me. Maybe I was a little more awake at the time. I don't know. So, but yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it worked for me, even the pacing of it. I'm not as familiar with a lot of other James Gray's films. I think Two Lovers is the only one I really know, the one he did with Joaquin Phoenix several years back and Gwyneth Paltrow, I believe. Okay. So I have not seen Lost City of Z. So maybe if I had seen that more recently, I would have seen a lot more similarities and felt like there were some repeating themes. But not having seen that other film, this was still a relatively new experience for me watching the film.
Well, and I think, I haven't seen Two Lovers, but I've seen Lost City of Z and also The Immigrant. And, he's definitely a director that is not worried about pacing. He likes the meandering pace, which, can work for me. It worked fine in The Immigrant. It worked fine for me in Lost City of Z. But with this one, not only did we have the meandering pace, but we had like Mad Lib psychology coming from Brad Pitt's mind in these droning monologues that I was just like, some of the visuals were slightly interesting on screen, but then you would have him just going on. And I'm like, you're putting me to sleep. You're just lulling me because you're not really, the stuff you're saying is not really coming together as a cohesive whole. I just was like, what's the point? And it is ditched for a little bit, but then it kind of comes back and, the monologues were not effective for me at all.
Okay. All right. Well, we had some other performances. Ruth Negga had a very small role playing someone, I guess, managing part of the Mars space, yes. I believe. Tommy Lee Jones, as we already mentioned, playing the father. That does have a small part in the film, but is looming throughout most of the film. Not really quite sure where, without going into spoilers, knowing how he's going to appear or where and in what state. I wish
you could spoil stuff about this movie, but I think, there's just nothing.
No, I feel like you can. I think there is. I think there's spoiler stuff. I think within
the first 10 or 15 minutes of the movie, you kind of know. You may not know what's going to happen between point A and point B, but you pretty much figure out, that's going to be point B. The reasons why point B is what it is.
That was more of the question is what situation are we going to find when we get to that point B destination?
Absolutely what you expect.
Yeah. Well, overall, Brad Pitt, his performance didn't really do anything extraordinary for me on the film. I mean, he played the role he's supposed to play, but I think they also knew, okay, we need to have a astronaut or somebody playing an astronaut that has no emotion,
Check.
Plays a blank slate, but that's the character. We want that character to be that way.
Sure.
So in that case, Brad Pitt was a pretty good fit for that.
And husbands will want to go see science fiction, and wives will be like, yeah, I'll get to look at Brad Pitt for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go do that.
So, I think they picked the right lead actor, but again, they intentionally, I think, made the character be one that you're never supposed to be really enamored with or intrigued by. It's a very blank slate of a performance, but I thought he did fine with it. I mean, nothing award winning, nothing he's going to get tons of accolades for, just a very serviceable role he played. Right. I love the visuals of the film. I do think the visuals were really striking. I thought there were some really great set pieces. I mentioned the moon scene with a chase scene, which I thought was really well shot and well done. There's some scenes on a spacecraft they board kind of in mid journey that they're getting some sort of distress signal from, and that was shot really well, and I think had some interesting visuals going on there. Yeah, I mean,
there are some set pieces that I call my wake up moments. Mm-hmm. So I start the film awake because of a dramatic sequence falling from a space antenna. Okay, was awake for that. That was well shot. That was interesting. Then there's lull of lots of monologues and me being bored. Then he gets to the moon, and we have the dune buggy chase. Okay, I'm awake again. Interesting. And then there's kind of a lull. Then there's the space baboons.
Space monkey.
So that was kind of interesting. Yeah. I thought, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And kind of a lull again. So just, pacing and the lulls just were really distracting. And then there's the ultimate kind of the point B that I was referencing, and that you kind of perk up for that because that's kind of an interesting thing.
And seeing the flow worked for me. I like the up and down kind of nature of the film, where it wasn't just constant activity, space stuff, and action stuff, but it also wasn't just a consistent talking movie either. So I think it was a nice balance for me. It worked for that.
When the thing, even the it's just not interesting. The guy doesn't do good dialogue for me. So when you have those monologues, make them interesting instead of just droning. Yeah. But what was up with the Natasha Lyonne's cameo playing her character from Orange is the New Black? What was up with that?
Yeah, that was a little interesting choice.
On Mars.
So Natasha Lyonne, who has a character she plays on Orange is the New Black, has a very, very quick, less than a minute scene on the surface of Mars, working in a Mars kind of check-in office.
So that was not an action scene that made me wake up, but that was definitely like, whoa.
They definitely had her playing the same character from that TV show, and it was a little out of place with the rest of the film. Where everybody else is pretty morose and pretty a smaller number of words being used in vocabulary. She filled that scene up pretty quickly with that. So, some interesting choices on the performances. I mean, Donald Sutherland's in the film for a short period of time as someone who knew Brad Pitt's father, the Tommy Lee Jones character.
Right.
And a few other names, I recognize, a few other faces I recognize, but overall, I thought the acting was fine. I thought the visuals I thought were wonderful. I liked the overall story, although will say that I thought the story took some creative leaps at times that were a little harder to go along with.
You mean like the spaceship panel doubling as like a Captain America's vibranium shield?
That was maybe a little much. More than anything, there was the one moment, again, I tried to go into too many details of the plot, but there's a sequence where Brad Pitt has to board another ship, and he's doing so unexpectedly to the crew. And the timing and the way the scene was put together, it was really hard to believe, because he's boarding a ship that's basically about ready to take off. And I think you see any liftoff in any kind of rocket, that seems like it'd be a pretty impossible situation.
Okay, and that's the thing for me is that, with this film, it's just kind of like, you're going to be scientific, but you're going to be realistic, less science fiction, try to be really grounded in what you're doing. Okay, but then you have stuff like that, and you have the Captain America space panel shield moment that I'm talking about that comes towards the end that is completely ludicrous and stupid. Choose your way. Choose either, because stuff that hasn't happened and people would probably die. Something like The Martian. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That movie, I liked it. I enjoyed it, but it's about Matt Damon doing some things that, probably in real life you maybe couldn't do. Mm-hmm. But the way it's explained and the way it's done, you kind of, at least I did, gave the movie a pass. Mm-hmm. In this movie, you have pretty grounded stuff, even the dune buggy chase on the moon, like whatever, that didn't bother me. But you get to the spaceship boarding thing you're talking about.
Well, that was the one scene that got me. I mean, honestly, and Chris is referring to a scene late in the film that, again, not kind of explaining what the situation was, but just know that someone is going through an asteroid field, like a little rock field, but holding a metal piece of a ship in front of them, almost like a shield, to deflect it as they're going through it. I mean, that didn't bother.
The stuff that even happened prior to that even happening, I'm like, seriously, he's supposed to be able to launch himself? Like, just all the logistics and the physics go out the window.
I was bought into the film, so none of that bothered me. The scene boarding the ship on Mars was the only one where I said, okay, that's a little much of a stretch there. So, but I bought it for the rest of it. I was enjoying it enough to go along for the ride. Yeah, it's been a divisive movie, I think, with a lot of other people. I mean, I think it's definitely people going into the film looking for a true science fiction space movie, come away disappointed that it's a lot slower, it's a lot more methodical, and it has a lot more inner monologues and
has a lot of nothing happening.
A lot of moments of nothing happening. People who I think want a true character drama that don't care about the science fiction stuff probably felt like it didn't go far enough that way either. So I think it was somewhere in the middle. It just so happened that balance worked for me fine. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. On a 1 to 5, I'm in a 3.5 level. It's got room for improvement, and it's not one of my favorite films of the year, but I think it's a pretty solid film for me anyway.
I'm pressed to give it 2.
Wow. Okay. Big drop off.
Sad Astra, Dad Astra. That's all this movie is.
Sad Astra. Yeah. Okay. What did Ad Astra stand for? Did they say?
At the very beginning of the film, it was, I think it's like To the Stars or something. And that was kind of like, so he's looking for resolution and they look to the stars. Of course, he's looking to the stars to have resolution with his daddy issues.
So okay. Yeah. Full disclosure. I did miss the first 10 minutes of this film.
Well, you missed some of the monologuing. Good for you.
Well, but I also missed the whole space fall thing too. So like 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. Yes. So I wonder if my opinion would have been changed in either direction. Unfortunately, that was one where I got called out on an emergency, and my boys had to fill in for me what I'd missed in the film in the first 15 minutes. So I wonder. Huh. Yeah, so I missed the definition of Ad Astra, which is why I asked.
I think your opinion would only go up because it was an interesting part of the film that was well shot.
Oh, see? Well, so I'm already in a pretty good place with my opinion, so that's not bad.
Like solid 4, 4.5.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, maybe I need to go check it out again and make sure I catch the first 15 minutes. So even despite missing the first 15 minutes, I enjoyed the film fairly well. So Chris and I are a little split on this one. That's okay. I'll be curious to see if we are just a split on the next film or not. So Ad Astra, that is the latest film from James Gray, writer and director, starring Brad Pitt. It's still playing in some theaters, I think, as of this time. I say check it out. Chris says if you need a nap, that's the way to go.
A nice air-conditioned theater. Sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind spending $10 for a place to cool off for a couple hours. So, all right. Well, Chris, let's move on to our other review. See, the thing is, I already knew your opinion of Ad Astra. We'd already talked about it before, so I wasn't terribly surprised. But I am interested to see your opinion of the next film we're going to review, which is latest film by Todd Phillips, typical comedy director, trying his hand at drama. And we have Joaquin Phoenix playing the classic Batman character, Joker.
Arthur, does it help to have someone to talk to?
My mother always tells me to smile and put on a happy face. She told me I had a purpose. To bring laughter and joy to the world.
So, Chris, I tried to think about this the other day, like how many popular characters in our pop culture history have been represented or portrayed by the most number of people. And you only have a few. There's really only a small handful of these characters. James Bond, I think we've had maybe 5 or 6 different people playing James Bond. Okay. Superman, and if you look at both film and TV, we've had, probably 5, 6, maybe even 7 with some of the new TV shows that are out now portraying that character. Batman, we have quite a few. Once you get past those, there aren't that many. I mean, it's a small elite group of people that have had so many multiple representations of a character on different forms of media. The Joker in just the last few years has kind of now got up into that level, because you go all the way back to Cesar Romero doing on the old Batman TV show. Right. You've got Jack Nicholson in the 1989 Batman film. And then you had, of course, Heath Ledger playing in The Dark Knight. You even had Jared Leto and just a few years ago in Suicide Squad. Right. And
then you got the TV things on Gotham.
You got the Gotham TV series. You got the animated versions of the characters. So a lot of different versions out there. So here's my big question for you. Todd Phillips, typically a comedy director known for The Hangover, known for Old School and some other comedies in that type of genre, has now gone and made this dramatic film. Martin Scorsese was attached to it to some degree early on. His name's still on there as producer, but my understanding is he didn't really have much of an impact in the film at all. He was really helping them connect with a lot of other resources by having his name on there. But then Joaquin Phoenix, an actor you and I have talked about in many other films before.
Yes.
I think The Master was one where we talked a lot about his performance there. We've mentioned him in other projects as well.
Right.
You have this interesting combination, director, actor, and the source material. Knowing that there's been so many other portrayals of the Joker, does this film add anything to the Joker presence in our pop culture world? Or do you actually feel like this presence of this movie actually takes away from this idea of a Joker that we have in our world?
Well, definitely doesn't take away. Does it add anything? It adds something. It adds a lot of discussion, obviously, because people have been ranting and raving about it. For me, we've had it at a news item for our show, that there was kind of that connection with Martin Scorsese. Mm-hmm. There was going to be references to King of Comedy and some Taxi Driver things thrown in there. And in the trailer, in one of the trailers they've had, you see Robert De Niro and you see kind of a curtain opening and you're like, okay. And you and I had mentioned that on the show. We thought, okay, that's kind of an interesting, because basically, if you don't know, if you haven't seen this movie somehow, it's an origin, air quotes, origin story of Joker. It's not like they're doing anything with Batman or anything. It's just Joker and it's, origin story type thing. And for me, I was kind of surprised that the homages were it was like basically riddled with homages. And that kind of hurt it for me maybe a little bit, because instead of just being clever, it ended up to me being a little bit more of a crutch than being clever. Okay. Now, there's not to say there aren't things about the film that I did appreciate and that I did like. This is a rare film, actually, that both of us have had the opportunity. The first time we saw it, we actually saw it together, and then we saw it separately a second time. And so my gut reaction the first time I saw it was kind of like, yeah, I just don't really know how I feel about this. It is, it's dark. It is, it's rated R. It's dark. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of, for lack of a better way to put it, mean-spiritedness in a lot of things that happen in the film. So that just kind of left me, just really throws you off and puts you in a weird headspace the first time you see it. Second time I saw it, knowing what I was getting into, I was able to appreciate certain things a little more. So what's your general read on Joker?
So I came out of this film really having enjoyed it.
That seems like an odd word to say about this film.
Well, yeah, again, I say enjoy it from a true craft, technical art standpoint. Obviously it's not an enjoyable story, but when you take the combination of the performance, which Joaquin Phoenix, I think this performance was pretty amazing.
I would say, we've referenced the kind of the hubbub about the film.
Mm-hmm.
For me, Joaquin Phoenix's performance, that's the one thing that I feel like is pretty much unassailable. If there's an undeniable strength of this movie, that's it.
Yeah.
It's just.
And I will say his performance probably accounted for 70 or 80% of my enjoyment of the film.
Yeah.
So I will say, if it wasn't for his performance and what he brought to the table with this, I don't know what this film would have been, and I don't know if I would have gotten anything out of it.
Okay.
But I will say his performance accounted for much of the enjoyment. I felt like, surprisingly enough, I thought the direction was very strong, very confident. I liked the visual style of the film. I thought there were some interesting choices made when it came to the direction and the use of the camera and overall what they chose to show or not show that I thought was really good. So again, I would not have assumed that with a comedy director like a Todd Phillips, but I thought it was really good. The story was slight. That's the one thing, if I had to say what would be the thing that probably just didn't work as much. The story, we can get into, can we do spoilers at the end of this part?
Sure.
I kind of feel like we need to with this one.
That was my kind of thing about, not getting in spoiler territory, but yeah, I feel like the story was slight, and that was my problem because the story was slight, and then on top of that, what story it did have, it was relying heavy on, I don't want to say ripping off King of Comedy and Taxi Driver and maybe a little dash of Fight Club, and definitely some cinematography ideas from Dark Knight. But it just got to be so referential that you're like, dude.
Well, I've got a hot take on all that, but I can't describe it until we get into the spoiler section.
I know what it's going to be, but okay.
So on the surface, for what it is, here's the thing that I think people are having a trouble with this film, and I think it's unfair. I think there's still, even though nobody wants to state it, with other reviewers or people talking about this film, everybody's comparing it to Heath Ledger. Everybody's comparing it to Martin Scorsese's films that are being referenced in here.
Oh, well.
And I don't know if that's quite fair because, again, I think you can have references to films. You can have homages to other types of films in a certain time period. This is very much a late 70s, early 80s milieu they put the film in.
Sure.
Now, why they put it in there, I have thoughts on that as well. We'll get to that later. But that's the milieu, that's the time period that we're in. So, of course, if you see somebody walking down a particular type of street and a certain hue and color over the film, and it's in this time period, it's in New York City, and there's any character that resembles someone from another famous film, there's automatically those connection points. And it makes it tough to review a film. So I think some people are having some trouble with that, especially the comparison to other Jokers. Me, I don't have a problem with that. I see all these films as independent. I see them as their own thing. But I hear so many other reviews I've read since coming up with my own opinion. People talking about better or worse than Heath Ledger or better or worse than this. And that's not fair to the film itself. Now, did we need a Joker film that gave a true origin? Part of what was really great about the Heath Ledger version of the Joker is that he didn't have an origin. We didn't know it. And that was kind of cool about it. I liked having this one. Again, seeing him as almost like a completely different version of the character. I liked the backstory here. I thought it was interesting. The tie-ins with the greater Batman universe, I thought were not necessary.
Actually, I guess you would say it's just one. The one tie-in, I thought that was something that was kind of interesting, and I've heard debates on whether or not it's an example of weak story writing or weak script, or whether it was left intentionally vague or kind of what's going on. But the use of the Wayne family and where you fall in the relationship between the Flecks and their family, and I'll just leave it kind of obscure for people who haven't seen the movie. I think that's an interesting point of discussion, conversation that can be had after you've seen the movie. That was something that I was not expecting, that I still am not sure how I feel about whether the ambiguousness is a strength or maybe a point of laziness. And without revealing too much, I can't really get into it.
Yeah, that's definitely, we can get into that a little later.
Tie-in to me was interesting.
It was interesting. Again, I don't feel necessary. I think I enjoyed the film and its merits even without that. And when those tie-in moments happened, I was surprised because I kind of went in with the thought of this is truly its own animal. This is its own thing. It's not really interested in trying to play in that larger Batman cinematic universe. And it still is playing by its own tune, but it does hit some points that I thought were surprising. Again, I didn't feel as necessary.
Right.
Yeah, some people are criticizing the film for basically either depiction of mental illness or for just watching somebody devolve and really not having any real point to it other than just to watch them get deeper and deeper down a dark hole. But, there's been some classic films where you're watching a character just kind of decompose or well, in this case, he actually feels like he's elevating himself, where we're actually watching it as, whoa, he's going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole here. Mm-hmm. I liked it. I thought it worked. And again, I can watch films and enjoy them if it's just watching a really, really great performance with a great character, handled by a competent director with, great, cinematography, editing, music, and all that.
Yeah,
without having to have the best story in the world, I can still have a great cinematic experience.
Music was good. Cinematography was good, but I can't really jump on board with the competence of the director. I mean, not that it was like completely sloppy, but there are some. I felt the film was in search of an ending. It didn't really know what it was doing. There's a TV station culminating event that I feel like it could have ended. Has a bunch of monitors and could have ended at that point. Then there's a cop car situation that happens and grandstanding on a cop car could have done that. And then we have a psychiatric situation, could have ended there. And then the ultimate shot, which I will not ruin, with the hallway. And then it was like, okay, now we finally got an ending. It was like, and there again, some of those shots were homages to other films. I'm like, quit, just do you're doing something original, but you're doing an original hodgepodge. Mm-hmm. Like you're not giving us enough an original story, giving us enough of something original to be entertaining because it's just a mashup of other films. And originally when we first heard about it, I was like, oh, that's an interesting take, but then it's like he didn't make enough of it of his own or something. So yeah, I don't know. I struggle with that. But I did say like, the relationship of the William family, without going too much into that to spoil, I thought that was interesting. Joaquin Phoenix's performance. Actually, something as simple as, which there again involves some discussion about how you feel they're saying about mental illness, which I can see why some people have some troubles with that. But the origin of Flex or Joker's trademark laugh, I thought that was really interesting. And how it's performed by Phoenix as the film progresses, I think that could be like a thesis paper in itself, is like how he does it at different points and when he acknowledges certain things about it. Like, I don't know. So there's, unlike with Ad Astra, I was not bored with this film. Whether or not I can say I really enjoyed it or whatever, I think certain parts of it are really well made. And, the mark of a film, whether or not how you rate it and then whether or not you liked it, those can be two different things. You can rate a film 5 stars but say I didn't really like it, or it's a one-timer film or something. This film gives you a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Which I am always going to err in favor of giving a film more credit just because of that.
Sure.
If I can come out of a film. Let me put it this way. When my wife and I'd already seen Joker once with you, as we talked about. Mm-hmm. And we had the chance to go to a movies because kids were off doing things. And it's one of those rare nights where my wife and I are both like, hey, we don't have anything going on tonight. Let's go see a movie. The choices were Downton Abbey or to go see The Joker for me a second time.
Right.
And, even though I'm always wanting to go see a movie I haven't seen before because I enjoy going to see new movies at the movie theater, I knew Joker was going to be a much more of a discussion worthy, let's have more to chew on type of film than Downton Abbey was probably going to be. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad she and I went to go see it because we ended up talking for a good hour or more afterwards just about the film. So whether that was intentional or whether I don't think it was sloppy writing. Again, I've got my theories.
Right.
We'll talk about in a moment.
Sure.
I don't think it was sloppy writing. Like lazy, just trying to make it.
Do you think it was ambiguous on purpose, or do you not think it's ambiguous?
I think it's ambiguous on purpose, but with a general nod to where they're going, where their thought process was with it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's meant to be ambiguous, but yet I think they had an idea of what they were trying to do with it. Maybe it wasn't done perfectly, but
so it wasn't executed
maybe not as cleanly as it could have been, but I still have my thoughts. We'll get to in just a little bit with that.
Okay.
Anything else with the film you want to kind of call out? Anything you thought was interesting or worth discussing with it?
I mean,
Robert De Niro's performance, anything with that?
There again, kind of distracting. I realize, but he's basically paying homage to King of Comedy, a film that he was actually in, but he's playing a different character. Maybe a little bit more distracting than anything else, but that could be a me hang up. If I didn't have that knowledge of that film, maybe it wouldn't be distracting. But and it's not like he did a bad job acting. Right. It was just distracting for me. Zazie Beetz, making the jump from the Marvel universe, and she has an awesome name. Yes. Playing kind of the love interest for Arthur Fleck. I thought she was great. What little she was in it, but she was in it. So, yeah. I mean, I guess that's my general comments overall.
Now, I really, really appreciated this film. And you and I are both fans of the Batman universe and characters and all. So, of course, we had a lot of enthusiasm going into this film. I tried to go in with as low expectations as possible.
That's a good place to start.
And I think that's probably why I come out pretty high on it, as opposed to going in with a lot of the buzz that was already happening online. Me hearing that it won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival was like, oh no, I don't want that kind of expectation. So I was actually happy when it hit stateside and people started immediately bashing it. I'm like, good. Bash it. Let me go in with low expectations and maybe I'll enjoy this thing. And I did. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So
I'll say too, kind of a point that it exceeded my expectations was that, we reviewed the film Venom on this show and both of us didn't like it. No. And one of my disappointments was I thought it was pretty interesting to do a film where you're going to focus on the bad guy, because that was the name of the film, was Venom, not, Spider-Man versus Venom, but Venom. And, kind of look at the darkness that character has and investigate kind of the mind of a villain. But what I didn't, there are numerous things I didn't like about that film, but one was they kind of end on him kind of being a good guy in a kind of odd way. And I was like, no. With the Joker, no. They show him having problems and they show people getting killed and just, I don't think you see him as a hero. I definitely do not see him as a hero, do not see him as someone admirable. So that kind of stuck to the guns of, no, we're going to show you this villain and we're not going to try to turn him around or anything. Right. So I was like, okay.
They tried to make him a little sympathetic, but I think, I think they only did that for purposes of character development. But at the end of the movie, you kind of lost that sympathy for him, which again is good. I agree with you. Right. He's a villain, and he is a villain at the end of the film. And you don't walk away and say, oh, poor guy, the world did this to him or whatever. There are times where you kind of feel like the film may be going that direction, but by the last third of the film, I think they realized, nope, any sympathy you built up, now we're just going to let this guy go full on and be the bad guy.
Well, see, they're getting initial reaction was I admired the film, but I didn't really like it because it just left a nasty taste in my mouth. But there's so much stuff I keep coming back to. We haven't even hit on this yet, but I'll say that I liked the film for this was kind of the commentary about bullying, specifically online bullying. Now, this is set, like you were saying, back in the 70s and 80s. So instead of
Or was it?
Instead of posting things on YouTube, instead it's showing clips on a TV talk show and, inviting somebody on not to glorify them or to say how awesome they were, but basically poking fun at them the whole time. Yeah. And that kind of, Robert De Niro's character on his show does that to the Joker, to Arthur Fleck. And so that kind of calling out about like, you are making light of my situation. You are poking fun at me. How dare you profit off my misery or off my failures? Thought that was something kind of interesting about how, people videoed or, shoot it with their phones, somebody falling down or somebody causing bodily pain to them or embarrassing themselves. And then they post it on YouTube and monetize it. So it's something interesting. Kind of holds up a window back to our society in unflattering ways. So.
Yeah. No, I think it had several interesting things to say. And, I don't think it perfectly executed everything it needed to say or wanted to say about the character, but I also believe there's a reason for that. So again,
we're going to get into spoiler territory?
I think we should because I'm just kind of busting at the seams here.
So if you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead to where we do our news section.
Yeah, just know that Chris and I both have a fair to excellent feedback on this film. Chris seems to be more on the positive than negative, but not super positive. I really enjoyed the film quite a bit and had a good experience with it. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into some spoiler talk.
You can sum up my rating. I liked it better than Ad Astra.
I don't really know what film wouldn't qualify as that anytime right now. So I will say with Joker. Okay, so here's my theory on this.
Yes.
This is where I walked away with this film probably with a much higher opinion.
This is your doctoral thesis.
It is. Okay. Yeah, this is my TED Talk.
This is your TED Talk on Joker.
And I could be off on this. This may not be the intention at all, but it works for me and it helps me to appreciate the film even more.
Okay.
Even though the film seems to be set in the late 70s, early 80s.
We don't see cell phones.
But I don't think it is.
Okay.
There are bookends on this film with a social worker at the beginning of the film and a woman working at the mental hospital prison type area where he is at the end.
Yes.
They look awfully familiar. Similar. Both African-American women seem to be about the same age. Similar body facial structures and all. Actually, to the point when I first saw the woman at the end, I'm like, oh, is that the same woman from before? It's not. But it's way too close to not be a coincidence.
Okay.
And even the scene, him talking to these women are set up almost the same way, camera angle wise, them across the table from each other.
Okay.
But the scenes in the hospital at the end look like they could be a little more modern day. And I am of the belief that everything we saw in this 70s, 80s milieu in the film is a origin story the Joker has concocted for himself. That elements of it are true. He did hurt and kill people. He did have a mother that had some issues herself that he feels like might have impacted him. I think it's an origin he has created in his own head for himself, and that everything is happening as he's sitting there in that mental hospital. He's done crimes. He's been bad. He's had his issues, but he's sitting there because even early in the film when he's supposedly at the social services department and he's meeting with his counselor or his whoever's assigned to him.
Caseworker, yeah.
She makes a comment about the time he was in the hospital, and you see a quick flash of him hitting his head against a glass window in that white, very staticky hospital. Throughout the entire film, there are about 5 or 6 other moments where he is hitting his head against either glass or window or something.
Right.
Making me believe he's still in the hospital this whole time. This is just the origin story he has now concocted for himself. He created this origin story where his mother's ex-boyfriend beat him and abused him, that he's was downtrodden by society, people mistreated him, and he got to get revenge, and he inspired all these people to follow him. I think that was all in his head. Or now, if you don't want to go with that theory, that I also believe this is the Joker. He is the prince of chaos. That's always been his thing, is to create chaos around him.
Right.
I don't think he had a condition about the uncontrollable laughter. I think he did it to mess with everybody and to put everybody else on edge around him. So That's my theory as well. Because there's actually one scene in the film where he is talking to his coworkers.
Yes, and he walks down the hall. He turns it off.
Immediately, right when he rounds the corner, he shuts it off.
Right.
I don't think he has a condition at all. I think he does it because it just unnerves everybody around him.
He did that after he'd shot the people in the subway, right? Or no, was that before?
Done what?
He did the cutting off of the laugh.
Oh, yeah. It was after
right. And so that's when I think like maybe the break had started to happen with. Yeah, it's an interesting. Well, think about it this way. Interesting thing. I don't think it was. If that is the case,
yeah.
I don't think it was executed really well.
No, I agree. It was a little sloppy.
So I feel like you're maybe giving it more credit.
Maybe
giving,
but it's what I choose to believe to enjoy the film even more.
Well, and I think if I had come up with that in my head, then
there are some moments that yes, you're right, do not hold up. Like why would he if he was creating his own origin story in his head? Why would he misimagine the Zazie Beetz character as not really being there? Why would you?
That doesn't really hold up.
It doesn't. I can try to find a way to explain it, but it's a little bit of a stretch. I like to believe that the reason he chose for his origin story to be in this time period of late 70s, early 80s is that he has seen the movies King of Comedy. He has seen the movie Taxi Driver. Those movies are movies that he grew up when he was younger. And these have kind of influenced his vision of the world, in his own fantasy origin story. So again, I don't know. It's a theory. It's got a lot.
You're describing a much better movie. And I thought this movie was good, but I think you're describing, and you already think it's a masterpiece. If that was the case.
Well, I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I think, if you did.
If this was the true and this was the intent and it was executed better, I think it would be like a masterpiece. It would be amazing.
Yeah. It gives enough moments to make you question what's real and what's not, which I like. I like a lot. Mm-hmm. And again, knowing that the Joker is, that was the whole premise with the Heath Ledger character of the Joker, is that he's telling these lies about his origin, about how he grew up. And he's telling different stories to different people because it's all about chaos, confusion, pranking, getting people on edge. And that's what makes me think the laughing condition was totally something he had control over. Just he knew what kind of odd situation it puts people in, an uncomfortable situation when he does it,
Well, and it shows him realizing that Zazie Beetz was not with him on several occasions, kind of like a Fight Club type thing. Mm-hmm. I wondered if some of the other stuff was kind of imaginary. Like I was alluding to the Wayne family. So since we're in spoiler territory, it's his mom basically spells out that she's been writing all these letters because she used to work for the Wayne family and she wants money from him because they're basically living in a really bad apartment, a really bad part of town. They don't have a lot of money for food.
She feels like Thomas Wayne would give money if he knew what kind of bad situation they were in.
And then it's further revealed that she says that basically Mr. Wayne is Arthur's father.
Yeah.
And then there's discussion on whether or not, A, he really is, or if he's not. And then the option C is, well, he is, but he had the mom committed and faked adoption papers and all this kind of stuff to try to cover it up because he was an illegitimate kid. So, and you don't.
Well, they never give a clarity on that.
Well, unless there's a photo that, and on the back it says, always liked your smile, and it was signed TW.
TW.
Now, could the mom have just written that on there of a picture of herself and had that hanging around for Arthur to see?
Could Arthur have just imagined it?
Could he have imagined it?
I mean, it does pose a lot of questions. The film does open up a lot of possibilities. I agree. And if I could have walked out and said, oh, I got this theory and it's perfect, and I explain it, and everybody who listens to it is like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. That would be really cool. But unfortunately, my theory, as soon as I say it to people are like, yeah, but what about this one part or this? And that means, unfortunately, if that was intended, it was not executed extremely well. Right. If it was not intended, there are way too many things put in there to make you believe it. So I like the fact that the Joker character is meant to be an agent of chaos and to create confusion and to create panic and to create uncertainty and uncomfortableness. And I think the film does that. And
it definitely succeeds in uncomfortableness.
Yeah. So whether or not it was as clever as I'm getting it credit, I don't know. But I enjoy it with that viewpoint that I put forth. So, okay. I'm done. Are we good? All right.
Yes.
Let's ease back into the rest of the show then. So if you skipped ahead or just kind of hitting the little skip ahead 15-second button over and over again on your podcast player, you can now stop. We are done spoiling. We're going to go ahead and move into the next section of our show after we take a quick break. We've just done our reviews for Ad Astra and Joker. Both of us higher on Joker between the two of us, with me giving it a pretty high review. I'm saying 4 out of 5 stars for me. I'm pretty high on this movie right now.
Okay.
And Ad Astra, I'm doing 3.5. In that neighborhood.
I said 2 for Ad Astra. I have no idea what my rating is going to be for Joker.
We'll just wait and see whenever you post it online. So you got some time to wrestle with it. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll do our news recap, which is basically all going to be about the Footcandle Film Festival that we just completed a few weeks ago. And we'll also move into our recommendation after that. So stay tuned. You're listening to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv.
Hey, this is Andrew Moose from the Street Circle Drive podcast here on The Mesh. Interested in promoting your business to an online audience? Your ad could be right here. Consider advertising on the Mesh Podcast Network. Head over to themesh.tv for details.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Alan Jackson, Chris Fry with you, co-founders, co-directors of the Footcandle Film Society and Footcandle Film Festival. We just finished our reviews of Joker and Ad Astra in the first half of the show. Now we're going to move on to some movie news, some things we want to talk about. This is normally the part of the show, Chris, where we comb the internet and read about some of the latest news coming out of Hollywood or production work or directors being assigned to projects. We'll pick back up with that next time we get together. Let's focus on something a little more personal to us, which was our film festival that we just held a few weeks ago. We had the 5th annual Footcandle Film Festival. It was held September 27th through the 29th of 2019. Held in Hickory, North Carolina. We had 35 films shown over a course of a weekend, a variety of genres and types of films. And we had several of the filmmakers come and join us for the weekend. And we got to enjoy awarding 6 different awards at the end of the festival weekend to some of those films that we showed. Chris, I know the answer to this because you and I, of course, have talked about the festival and we're there all weekend long with all the films and the filmmakers and our guests and attendees. Anything kind of a good overall wrap up for you on the festival, or anything you feel like that was really of interest before we kind of talk about some of the award winners?
Every year we get a little bigger. Yeah. And I think that was the case this year. It was nice to see the filmmakers come out. This year was exceptional in that we gave away to 3 different grant winners. We started our grant program last year and gave it to 2. And this year we got to increase that to 3. The diversity of the films that are going to be made with our grant was interesting and, inspiring to me. And something also unique, we were able to 2 first-time directors and actresses are going to get some of our grant money and make a movie called Drought. So that was kind of something a little different you hear about in the filmmaking community, trying to broaden it for diversity and for women and, to try to make it stronger. So I like to help, or I like to think that we're helping that happen.
Well, and Chris is mentioning the grant program. So that's something we started last year, and we basically take the ticket proceeds from the previous year's festival, funnel that into a grant program. So at our closing ceremony dinner at the end of the festival, we did award 3 grants to 3 different film projects that out of a pool of people who had applied for the grant program. So yeah, it's really great to kind of see some money going into some filmmaking projects, especially those kind of in our home state of North Carolina here. With the festival weekend, so we had both narrative feature-length films. We had 5 of them in contention. We had 5 documentary feature-length films. And then we had probably about 24 different short films throughout the weekend that we played as well. So, of course, we gave our awards
We did.
to them. We had 4 awards that were judged awards, meaning this was a panel of judges that we requested and asked to be a part of our judging process. They got to review the films in advance of the festival, and we had 4 awards named by judges. And then we had 2 awards that were determined by the audience voting that was happening on every film throughout the entire weekend. Chris, you and I got to do some number crunching, tabulating throughout the weekend, and getting some assistance on that, and we're able to end up with our 2 audience favorite ratings for the awards with that. So, Chris, you want to kind of read through and talk through some of the awards that were given out at the festival this year?
So we did have 5 different documentaries that played the festival, and the one that was chosen as the winner of our featured documentary category was Kifaru. And this was a film that follows the lives of 2 young men that were recruits in Kenya to do a conservancy project taking care of rhinos. And it follows, them trying to take care of the rhinos, of one of the last northern white rhinos in existence. But and that in itself is interesting, but it also kind of delves pretty deeply into the lives of the men themselves and the time they have to spend away from their families and kind of some of the toll that takes on them. So that was a really good film, and I was happy to see it actually not only won the Best Documentary Feature category, but it also took away our festival's award for the audience favorite feature.
That's right.
So that was nice to see that it walked away with 2 awards.
Have we had a double award winner yet?
This was our 5th festival, and this is the first time that's ever happened.
That's pretty amazing. So Kifaru got a great response from the crowd, obviously in winning the audience favorite feature-length film. And kind of interesting note, I don't know if did you see the National Geographic cover this past couple weeks?
I have not.
It is the rhino Sudan was on the cover with one of the caretakers taking care of him, holding him in a very similar shot that we have for the movie itself. That came out about the same time as our festival. So it's kind of very interesting that topic and this idea of extinction and what it means to our society was first and foremost on National Geographic magazine as well.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it was a great screening with that. I'll hit the one of them here.
Sure.
I'll talk about the Best Narrative Feature Film. So you mentioned documentary feature film.
Right.
We had 5 narrative feature films that we showed throughout the weekend as well. And the film that won from the judges, our Best Narrative Feature Film, was a film called 8 Slices, directed by Nick Westfall. And Tamara Mercer, one of the producers, was at the festival to accept the award and talk a little bit with our crowd about the film. It is a slight comedy drama about a pizza parlor in North Carolina. So again, nice connection regionally here. About a pizza parlor that employs a really nice diverse group of people and a very interesting work environment. That's one that's promoting reading and promoting really supporting employees. But the pizza parlor is going on some hard times and may be in danger of closing. Enter a YouTube star who decides he's going to come and kind of go undercover as an employee at the pizza parlor and try to exploit it and maybe show how maybe it's not one of the best places to work in the world.
Making fun
like we talk about in Joker. So, right. 8 Slices. It was a good fun film, and it was really nice to have people represented from the film there at the festival. And like I said, it won our Judges Award for Best Narrative Feature Film during our closing dinner. Yeah. What about some of the short films, Chris, that won some of the judged awards?
So I'll hit some of the short films that won. For the Best Narrative Short Film, we gave that to a film from Spain called Minor Key. And it's basically a story about a father and a son and their relationship, and has kind of a little bit of a twist, which I will not ruin because hopefully people will get to see it at some point.
True.
So that won for our Best Short Narrative, and that was a judged category. For the Best Short Documentary, a film called The Traffic Separating Device, kind of a mouthful to say, but that one and it's from Sweden, and it was a short documentary talking about a traffic separating device that was installed in the middle of Stockholm, and it kind of shows people ignoring it or trying to go around it, and things don't really work out well. And it's interesting that this was a judged category as well. And one of the judges kind of commented when they were rating this that it just really stuck with them because, yes, on one level you can say, oh, it's just a funny little documentary about this device. But it also kind of reveals a lot about stubbornness of humanity and thinking they know the best way to do things and being belligerent and not wanting to do something. It was kind of revealing on that level. So I'm glad it won because it's pretty clever. So that again,
it's a very unique short documentary film. And yeah, it was actually really entertaining. I think people really enjoyed watching it because, again, like you said, it's an exploration of human nature.
Yes.
You incorporate a change, something people don't want or expect into a society, especially a busy downtown society, and watching everybody's reaction to it. And then you learn a little bit about the people that are impacted by it as they're either waiting for help or trying to fix their problems. It was very interesting, very interesting.
So we have one more winner, and that was for audience favorite short. Alan, do you want to hit that?
So the audience favorite short film was a film called Molly, directed by Phyllis Jackson, starring Chris White, who's a director who's had some films actually play at our festival in the past, and written by Chris White as well. A short film about a gentleman who is looking to buy drugs for the very first time from someone he knows is a drug dealer in a certain apartment complex. And just the dialogue they have during that process, that trying to have a transaction, but you get a little deeper into conversation between the two of them. And with an interesting little fun twist as well in the film. So yeah, the crowd really responded to this. We showed it during our late night gallery short films on the opening night, Friday evening. And it won audience favorite short film with the highest score from the everybody that saw it. So it was nice that I think Phyllis is located out in Georgia, so they make a lot of films in the Georgia and South Carolina kind of area. So really nice to be able to have someone from the South also getting the short film award from the audience. So.
Well, we had said, and that's kind of the summary. Were there any closing thoughts you had on the festival, Alan?
I'll just say that I feel like I'm always happy with after our festival's done, not only because it's a lot of work and it's nice for us to kind of sit back and just kind of recollect on the weekend, but I honestly feel like the quality of films keep improving every year. I think we had some really, really solid films come in, and with over 300 submissions to be considered for the festival, and our screening committee helping it get down to 35 films that we showed. They really were the cream of the crop, and we left out a lot of really good films that got submitted just to make that 35 slot weekend fit. So it's just rewarding to know that there were some great films we showed. There were other great films that unfortunately we couldn't have in the festival because of time restrictions. So just it was just a nice process. I love seeing the quality of films get stronger and stronger every year we go along.
Speaking of, we do kind of have one news item, and it actually kind of ties in with the festival.
Okay.
Barnabas Toth, a filmmaker that came to our festival last year, his short film Chuchitage won our best narrative short last year, and then it went on to be on the short list for the Academy Awards for short films, but it didn't make the final 5, but it did make the short list of 10. He has a new film out called Those Who Remained, and we actually had it submitted to come to our festival, but unfortunately, that film got pulled because he wrote us and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I've got some distribution, a company that's helping me with distribution now. They want to do this, and so I've got to pull it for your festival. I'm really sorry." We're like, "Hey, we understand. Distribution's awesome. That's what independent filmmakers are looking to do." Come to find out, it had its debut at Telluride Film Festival in August. And it's also going to play the Chicago International Film Festival at the end of the month, October 21st. So best of luck to Barnabas with that. And also what's exciting is it has been selected as the best foreign language film for the next Academy Awards in 2020 for Hungary. So
wow.
That's their official selection for the Academy. So didn't get to play our festival, but the fact that Hungary is submitting that as their best foreign language film, that's kind of cool.
Very encouraging. No, it's great. So, and again, that's another great thing with festivals. I'm going to say just festivals in general, not just our festival.
Sure.
Is getting to see some great talent on the rise. Because again, Barnabas Toth, this example you just gave, came to our festival last year, came to Hickory, North Carolina to help screen his short film, won the award, as you mentioned as well. To know that his next film is now Oscar contender in the foreign language category. His film Chuchitage last year at our festival was also on the short list for the Oscars Short Film Award. Mm-hmm. So to see great filmmakers, to see great films that are just hopefully on the upswing and just going to get stronger and stronger as they move along is always rewarding for any festival environment. So I really do encourage people, if you've never been to a film festival, hey, we'd love for you to come to ours, but even if you go to any other festival, I think that's really where you can see some emerging talent and see some great works of art that you may not have a chance to see otherwise. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. Well, that is the Footcandle Film Festival for 2019. It is on the books, done, and we've already started the process for submissions for 2020.
We made the preparations. You can start submitting your film November 1st.
Okay, November 1st. So if you're listening to this and you've got a film that is eligible for festival screenings in the coming year and you want to have it considered, November 1 is when it opens up. It runs until what? End of May, June 1st. So you do have a good bit of time, but don't wait till the last minute. You can actually get it a little cheaper if you go in now.
That's right. Yeah. We do the whole thing where the longer you wait, the more expensive it is, just to help with administrative costs. So if you do it before January, you get the early bird rate. So
that's right. So we do encourage you, if you or someone you know is a filmmaker, has a project that you're finishing up or are ready to start showing at festivals, we'd love to have it considered for our next year event. And thank you, Chris, to all the work you did on with your screening, organizing the screening committee to make sure that we got the best films picked. And I think the festival was a great experience. And now we'll start planning for 2020.
Which we know those dates already. They are September 23rd through the 27th. 23rd
through the 27th. A little longer.
It is.
A little more dates added to that range. We'll be having more to talk about as the months go on.
Absolutely.
Going up to that. All right, Chris, now let's move on to the final part of our show. We've had 2 in-depth discussions of films. We've talked about our film festival. Now it's time for us to give our recommendations. And Chris, I'm going to let you go first because I still haven't quite exactly figured out which one I want to recommend at this point.
So you need to flip a quarter while
I do. Okay. So take your time. Feel free to expand on your recommendation as much as you would like. Well, what do you have to recommend for us this month?
I'm going to recommend this film, and you might think I'm recommending it solely off the title, which is partially true. I am recommending The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
And then the Bigfoot?
And then the Bigfoot.
Okay.
Yep, that's the name of the film. Huh. So the title, yes, caught my eye, and I watched it. Also, the poster helped, because on the poster is the main character, who is the man, and he is played by Sam Elliott, who I like him a lot. You know, I first came to know him as the guy who sits at the bar and talks to the dude in The Big Lebowski. And, you know, Sam Elliott just has the voice. You know, you hear his voice, you're like, oh, that's going to be Sam Elliott. He was most recently, I think, in Stars Born, where he played Bradley Cooper's older brother.
Right, he did.
But yeah, this is just an odd movie, and it is exactly about a guy who killed Hitler, and so he's an American war veteran, and he's kind of fallen out from society and kind of keeps to himself, but he is recruited back to go kill Bigfoot. So, and it is not, by the way, it may sound like it's a comedy. It is not a comedy. It's a drama. It's an adventure, and obviously a little bit of sci-fi there with the fact that there's a Bigfoot. It's interesting. It's extremely well acted. Sam Elliott's just amazing in it. They do some flashbacks with younger versions of himself, and it basically tells his story of how he did what he did. It's not a perfect film, and I think I can basically hedge that in. It's an independent film without a huge budget. There may be some problems with some creature effects when it comes to the Bigfoot part, but still, I really enjoyed it. It's an hour and 38 minutes, so that kind of helps, the fact that it's, you know, briefer. But I really enjoyed it. It was a curious film for me. I'm interested to see what the director does next. I'm not familiar with his work. Robert Kreskowski, I think is his name. Kind of hard to pronounce there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd never heard of him before. So this is the first thing I'd seen by him. It's just interesting concept for a film. And it worked. I mean, the premise, even though it is kind of ridiculous, it worked. So it's on Netflix, I think. Okay. But I recommend you checking it out. That is The Man. It's kind of hard to say without laughing, but The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
And then the Bigfoot, like singular Bigfoot. Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay, you got me with that one. I've not heard that film at all. So congratulations, you got me stumped there. So
have you had time to?
Yeah. I got it narrowed down, and awesome. I feel like I wanted to find something that kind of nicely tied in with something else on this show, and I think I've got the right one for it.
Okay.
Joker that we talked about earlier is an origin story, and that we learn a little bit about a character before they became the big name that we come to know. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like this film recommendation because I almost feel like it's an origin story for Martin Scorsese films in that this is the film Mean Streets that I caught back up with not too long ago. Okay. It's one I saw back in my film classes in college, and I had not really gotten deep into Scorsese films at that point. But now as you watch it, it really almost feels like it's an origin story for the Scorsese gangster movie that we're going to have in the coming years. This is 1973, directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Martin Scorsese, but it stars Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro, who was also in Joker.
Yes.
What I found really fascinating about this film is I love Goodfellas. Goodfellas is one of my top 10 all-time favorite films.
Okay.
I admire a lot of other Scorsese films as well, but Goodfellas is cream of the crop as far as I'm concerned.
I think he may be listed either on the Mesh website. Yeah, I guess it would be the Mesh website as your favorite director.
Yep. And because I think body of work, I think rises above. I think, there's some low spots in his filmography, but they're not really low compared to others. And his high spots are just really, really high. Gotcha. So even films that didn't work 100% for me, Wolf of Wall Street, more recently, there's several others I could rattle off. Hugo, other films good, not perfect films.
Did you see Silence?
I have not seen Silence. That's one of the few I have not seen.
Okay.
But again, the overall average, if I were to look at the ratings of this film in my mind, is higher than most other directors. So Mean Streets is kind of fun to go back and watch because it's lower budget. It's older. It's early in Scorsese's career for sure. Mm-hmm. But you kind of feel like you're seeing the origin of Robert De Niro in a way and Harvey Keitel. These are actors that were fairly new and young at this point, but getting to see them kind of forming the kind of character actors they're going to become, I think is really fascinating. Basically, the plot of the film is New York's Little Italy. You have a low-level hoodlum, this is defined wrestling with loyalty to his mobster uncle, his faith, and his friendship with a gambler that he knows as well. So Charlie is that Italian-American man. He's got these feelings of responsibility. He has a reckless younger brother, Johnny Boy, who's the Robert De Niro character, who is a small-time gambler who owns a lot of money to loan sharks. So kind of, feeling like he's got to take care of it, help his younger friend. But at the same time, he's trying to, deal with his own mobster uncle himself.
Gotcha.
It's got a lot of the Scorsese things that become trademarks later on. You've got the long following shot as it goes into a new setting, very much made famous in Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. That started here. You've got the Robert De Niro getting to play a big, kind of more, not gangster, but the gambler, kind of the big, criminal-minded type of person.
Right.
And it's got enough of the Scorsese touches, but you can kind of see the nucleus of what's going to be so much bigger and better with future films. So again, Mean Streets to me is kind of like the Scorsese origin film, getting to see him forming as a director and these actors that we're going to get to know a lot more in his future work.
Right.
So it's not one of my favorite Scorsese films by all means, but I admire it for what it's building and what it's going to become in his filmography. So that's Mean Streets. That's one I did catch up with recently. I think it's a really good film, but I think it's more important to watch to see a director really starting to build and come into his own and create his own personality of what his films are going to look like going forward. So, yeah. And what was yours again? The man who shot Hitler and then the
man who killed Hitler.
Killed Hitler.
And then the Bigfoot.
And then the Bigfoot.
There you go.
Okay. Good. That should be a pretty easy one to search for.
Yeah, I mean, right. And Sam Elliott.
I mean, if you just search for Hitler or Bigfoot, That's going to be the only film that shows up.
Bigfoot, Sam Elliott.
This will be the only film that shows up.
Yes.
Okay, good. Easy to find then.
Yes.
All right. Yes. So that's our recommendations. Mine is Mean Streets from 1973. Chris is the film we just mentioned from just now.
Yeah. I think it was made in 2018, but was released in 2019.
Okay. All right. So a brand new film there.
Yeah.
Trying to keep it mixed up here on our recommendations.
There
And that's, I think we did that. So, all right. So Chris, that is the end of our show. I am saying go out and see Joker. Go out and see Ad Astra. Chris is telling you not to see Ad Astra unless you want to sleep. Right. And telling you that, Joker's okay.
And not even, you want to sleep, but you don't pay $10 for the air conditioning. Rent it on Redbox and then watch it at your home with a fan blowing on you. But it's October. You don't really need air conditioning now anyway.
I do not agree. So that's fine. All right. And then we had our Footcandle Film Festival recap and we've had our recommendations. So Chris, a lot of opinions we've thrown around during the course of this show. If anybody's got some comments, questions, anything else for us, what do they need to do?
So the best way to reach us would be send us an email at info@themesh.tv. Mention Footcandle Films in the subject line and tell us what I'm wrong about Ad Astra or which one of us or both of us are wrong about the Joker, your takes on the Joker, one of the year's, surprisingly enough, really divisive film for a comic book movie. But yeah.
Divisive, but making tons of money. So, it's getting a lot of people going out to see it, even if they hate it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the best way is info@themesh.tv. If you are a subscriber to our podcast, thank you. If you're not, please consider subscribing to our podcast. We are on Apple iTunes. If you go there and subscribe, it wouldn't hurt if you'd also leave a review or give us a rating because that helps us reach more listeners.
Yeah. So we do encourage you to kind of reach out to us, have a conversation. We love talking movies. We love talking with our listeners as well. So Chris, we'll be back probably within a couple of weeks with another episode. We'll be reviewing a couple of films. Can I go ahead and at least tease one of the films?
Yes. If you do it in the style of the actor, you may.
Oh, no. I can't do that. So Chris and I had an opportunity to see an early review screening of the film Dolomite Is My Name, which is I'm not going to give away anything in our review yet, just to say when this film was announced, terribly excited for me.
Was it a news item?
It was. Oh, yeah. We talked about it months ago where I said, look, this could be the Eddie Murphy comeback.
Right.
This is what I'm excited about. So stay tuned for the next episode to find out, did it work? Is this the Eddie Murphy comeback or another misfire such as The Adventures of Pluto Nash? Or 1,000 Words, I believe, was one. What's another one? Oh, my gosh.
It wasn't like Mr. Smith, but it was like Mr. So, and I can't remember.
Yeah, that one supposedly was pretty bad, too.
Yeah,
so he has not had a good string of victories in the last several years.
The Haunted House film that he did.
Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll be back at the next episode to answer the question, is he back? Is Eddie Murphy back with Dolomite Is My Name from an early Netflix screening that we got to catch with? So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks for listening to The Mesh, and thanks for listening to Footcandle Films. We'll talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.